Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very first Harness Money Live. I am very excited to be here and to be chatting about everything that is going on in the financial world. My mission is to help you build wealth, and I want to go ahead and break down all of the latest headlines that are out in the news today because I think it's very important that we stay on top of what is happening in the financial community, in the financial world, and that we just continue to learn from the present situation. One of the things that I have found that has really helped me into building my wealth or just making money in the market is to look for trends that are happening in the market and then go ahead and double down on those or invest in the trends that maybe the overall stock market hasn't found or the news media is not talking about, but that's happening in the market that you can get in early and just ride that wave. So let's go ahead and get into today's headlines. Right now, the Dow Jones is sitting at 33,428. The S&P 500 is at 4,078. The Nasdaq is at 13,697. This is pretty much all-time highs. We're not right there. It is off a little bit from the high of the day, but that is pretty much the top of the market, as high as the US stock market has been ever. So this is definitely an expensive market to be in, but I definitely think there are still opportunities out there to be found. A lot is happening now. We're not out of the pandemic yet. People are getting vaccinated. I think the last thing I read was over 100 million US citizens have gotten at least one shot of the vaccination right now. So I'm sure that number will continue to climb as we go into the summer, and more momentum is going to pick up in the business community as more people are vaccinated and we start to slowly get back to normal. But I think it is still going to be a long time before we really reach the top of the stock market. I think there's still plenty of room to run. And of course, the price of Bitcoin right now is 56,160. So it continues to climb. It has been steady in the 50s for the past few months, and I think that is where it's going to stay for at least a little while longer. But I do think it will continue to climb as more and more institutions are getting into the Bitcoin space. I think that a lot of people, a lot of businesses and organizations are going to be putting more money into Bitcoin. Tesla has already announced that you're going to be able to buy a car, if not already. You're going to be able to buy more cars in the future in Bitcoin. So that'll be interesting to see how that is adopted and how that looks. But Bitcoin has a big future ahead. I think more and more financial institutions are going to be recommending Bitcoin as part of wealthy individuals' portfolio. And so that will just drive the demand higher. And I'm actually kind of obsessed with this KuCoin. The KuCoin app is a crypto trading app, crypto wallet. There's all kinds of different features that it has. I'm still exploring it, but it looks like a very interesting way to make money in the crypto space. I'll let you know how that goes into the future. And now let's get into some of the top news. The biggest news story right now is, of course, the President Biden's infrastructure plan. Is this infrastructure plan going to happen? Well, it looks like it is going to be a tough sell for him to get through Congress. There's opposition on both sides. There's opposition from the Republicans. There's opposition from the Democrats. Not all of, just a select few Democrats, but that's really the interesting piece. The Republicans are pretty much solidly behind that. They are anti-infrastructure, but anti-Biden infrastructure. They don't want this bill. They think it's too big. But the Democrats are split because you have the more progressives, the AOC and Elizabeth Warren wanting to go bigger, and then you have the more conservative Joe Manchins wanting to go smaller. And I really think that the more progressive conservatives, so AOC, Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, they are going to get on board. They are going to vote for this plan pretty much no matter what. But on the other hand, you have Joe Manchin and some of the more conservative Democrats. They are not going to go for this plan. He's going to have to really negotiate with them to get them on board to actually vote for this plan. And Biden needs all of the caucus. He needs all of the Democrats in the House and in the Senate to pass this bill. I actually think he's going to end up changing some of the rules in order to get this infrastructure bill passed. But I think it will eventually get passed. I just think it's going to be somewhat of a fight. So it was interesting. So Joe Biden's plan is to raise taxes in at least two different ways that we know of. So the corporate tax rate, he wants to push back up to where it was pre-Trump, and also the federal income tax rate for wealthy individuals. He's going to increase that back to the 39% where it was pre-Trump. But Joe Manchin has already said that he doesn't want to go as high on the corporate tax rate, that having a lower tax rate, a lower corporate tax rate, makes the United States economic situation more competitive worldwide. So I found this very interesting. So Joe Manchin has already said that he wants the taxes that they're thinking of raising to be lower. So he doesn't want those to be as high, and then he'll consider voting for it. I'm sure he's also going to get some things for his state, West Virginia, in that bill. But you have that on one side, but then you have the other side, which is Janet Yellen, his Treasury Secretary, former Fed chair, that she wants to have a global corporate tax rate minimum. That is definitely a departure. That would be a tall order to actually accomplish, that everyone in the world is going to agree to the same tax rate, which I'm really thinking of Europe, because in Europe you have the battle between the EU. Number one, England has broken away. They said no more EU. They're doing Brexit. So they're going to have their own system. But then you have the European Union, and then you have Ireland. There was this big tax battle for Apple because Apple, I guess, had been domiciled in Ireland, and their tax rate is super low versus the much higher EU corporate tax rate. So I don't know if you're going to be able to get some of these countries that are trying to be more competitive. Ireland is so much smaller. They need to be more competitive than, I would say, a Germany economy. So you're going to have to really get all these people on board. I'm not saying it's impossible, just saying it's a big lift, which who knows? Now that the pandemic is ending, that we had a global response to the pandemic, maybe you can get all of these countries on board to come together and have a global minimum corporate tax rate. It's kind of like a universal basic, am I saying this right? Basic universal income, where basically the governments are going to start paying people. I feel like it's in the same realm as that, where you're going to have one standard for everybody. I just think it might be a good idea that everyone is on the same playing field, but on the same time, it's just wrangling cats, wrangling politicians together. The other piece of news that came out was that Jeff Bezos actually came out publicly and said that he supports a higher corporate tax rate in the United States, which is a little ironic for Amazon. Amazon, one of the biggest companies in the entire United States, they have had a history, I wouldn't say of tax dodging, but just using every piece of the US tax code to their advantage. So for many, many years, they were not paying taxes in the form of, federal corporate taxes. They were paying a lot of different taxes. This is the same idea that Trump claimed. President Trump claimed that he paid a lot of taxes because he had all these different properties. So he always paid property taxes. Same with Amazon. Amazon operates in all these different locations. So they're paying taxes on a lot of the operations that are happening in different locations. They're also paying taxes when they go to buy equipment. So they're buying equipment. You have to pay the sales tax to actually buy that equipment, but then you can write off that purchase as a tax deduction on your actual corporate tax rate. So it's kind of a little bit of both, but it was just interesting that Amazon has traditionally used every tool in the toolbox to avoid paying taxes, but now Bezos is saying that he's actually pro a corporate tax rate that's higher. So I wonder if Amazon will actually pay that amount, or that they will still use some of their clout and leverage to get that reduced. Now, he's also said that he was in favor of the infrastructure plan, which I totally get. That is totally in Amazon's interest to have a better U.S. infrastructure, to have better roads and bridges and hubs, airports, better airports for them to fly into. That benefits a lot of different businesses besides Amazon. This is definitely an interesting way to think. You see a lot of the mentality of the corporate executives. There's two different sides. So I've seen this before with Bezos, with Tim Cook, with Apple, with Warren Buffett. I think a lot of times these individuals will vote personally. They will vote Democrat. They're more on the liberal, personal freedom side. But then when it comes to corporate governance, they have to be an advocate for the business. They feel like it's their number one job to be an advocate for Apple or for Amazon or for Berkshire Hathaway. And that means having lower taxes on the actual businesses, doing everything they can to increase the net income of the business, but to decrease the tax liability of the business, which is very interesting. It's just not so that I don't feel like it's the most democratic idea, the Democratic political party idea, to pay lower corporate taxes, but it is what it is. These businesses have got to please their shareholders. It also benefits them personally to increase the revenue and the net income. So you just have to balance that and walk that fine line. It's just an interesting thing to see. But this brings me to my next point. How are we going to invest into the infrastructure bill, into Joe Biden's infrastructure bill? So this is always something I'm looking for when I'm going to invest into a particular stock or into a particular trend, is what is coming down in the future that I can get into today and benefit from the future. So we know that the infrastructure bill is going to have roads, bridges, which to me translates into concrete. It's going to take a lot of tools to build this infrastructure. So you can look into investing into concrete companies. They say something like a John Deere or the Caterpillars of the world. There's going to be a demand for all of these construction machinery parts. So it's just interesting to see. Also, raw materials. That's infrastructure. $2 trillion worth of infrastructure is going to take a lot of raw materials. So that's a lot of concrete. That's a lot of steel rebar that's going to go in there. And then you also have the companies that are actually going to do the infrastructure building and construction. So you have the companies. What happens is when a bill is passed in $2 trillion, that money is going to be funneled to the states through the transportation department. So it's going to go in Texas. We have TxDOT, or out in California, you have the California highway system. It'll flow into that. And then that money will be passed to different companies to fulfill the order of building more bridges, building more roads, keeping the roads up. So there's going to be a lot of companies that benefit from this large passage of money, of funding to these roads and bridges. So it's definitely, keep an eye on all those companies that are going to actually fulfill the mission of the bill. The other thing to look at is going to be green energy. Green energy is 100% going to be a part of the infrastructure bill. So these are all the companies. You have Enphase, you have Sunrun, who knows, maybe a Tesla, maybe some other solar businesses. So TAN, that ETF, the solar ETF sector is going to be big. Wind energy. So there could be a lot of energy companies that benefit from this infrastructure bill, from building out a better infrastructure. I think a big part of this infrastructure is going to be what happened in Texas, which was the big freeze, making sure that the electrical grid in the United States is up to code, that it's as good as it possibly can be, and that we don't have a big freeze that wipes everything out off the grid again. So there's going to be upgrades in those. So who knows? Definitely energy companies to look out. But that's the way that I like to think. It's like, when this bill passes, what are going to be the ripple effects from this bill that I can put my money into today and have grow over time? Because that's the other thing about the infrastructure, is they're already saying it's going to be a 10 to 15 year plan that this is going to be carried out. So this is going to be a long-term a long-term bill versus just the year-to-year budget that is passed by the Congress. So you're looking at investing your money for many, many years into the future. Now, what else is happening in the news? Iran is going back to the table with their nuclear talks, their nuclear agreements, and that is happening in Europe between the United States and Iran. I really think that the sanctions that were put on Iran from the Trump administration were really hurting them again, and they want to get those lifted. That's purely the most simple reason is that they think that their economy will benefit if they play well with the United States. And so we'll see. We'll see if that actually happens, because I know there was a lot of distrust that happened once the United States pulled out of the nuclear agreement for whatever reason. Maybe that Iran is promoting terrorism around the globe. But whatever it is, it definitely, there were cracks that I don't think have healed between the United States and Iran. But I think it is in everybody's interest to reduce nuclear capabilities, which actually goes to the other part of the world, which is North Korea. North Korea seems to be still ramping up their ambitions to be a nuclear power, a military power. I'm not sure what their end goal is with all of that, with launching rockets and using rockets. They feel like they are someday going to go back to war with South Korea. I don't think that will ever happen. I don't think it's in the interest of China. I don't think it's in the interest of Japan or the United States for there to be a war on the Korean peninsula. So we'll see what the Biden administration does with North Korea. That will be interesting because, of course, we all saw what happened with Trump in North Korea, where he went over and he met the leader and tried to create some type of negotiation with them, but it never really happened. Nothing meaningful, I feel like, ever really came out of that. So now they're right back to testing missiles on the Chinese backyard, in the Chinese backyard into the sea. So we'll see what happens with that. That will be interesting to watch, but definitely not going in the right direction for the United States. I don't know how Biden's going to handle that, but we will find out. What else is happening? This one is a good one. The Cathie Wood ARK SpaceX ETF has launched. It has been put out there into the market, and it was very surprising. I'm going to go break down a whole video on this in the future about coming soon, about my pros and cons of the ARKX ETF fund. It is actively managed. There were some very surprising names that were in this fund, that are in this fund. I think Netflix was one of them, I guess, because satellites and broadband, but it was just interesting to see what they classify as space and where that is going into the future. I think space has a bright future, but it's going to be a long-term game. That was the thing that I took away from this fund. But this is going to be a 10, 20, and 30-year endeavor for space exploration, for there actually to be an economy in space that can be profitable. I think in the short term, it's going to be the satellites. You have SpaceX, you have Virgin launching these satellites into space and then trying to create probably a broadband network across the actual globe, the entire globe. Who knows? Maybe that will be a great alternative to 5G versus putting all these towers, is having satellites in space, but it's still early. And the other thing I took away was it's going to take a lot of money. It is going to take so much capital in order to create an economy in space with a profitable market. I just feel like it's going to be a very heavy capital intensive. We've seen it with SpaceX. We've seen it with Virgin, that it's taken a lot of capital to actually launch things into space, and then to get it profitable is another story. And that leads me to SpaceX with Elon Musk. I live here in Texas, and he has been on the news a lot. Everything is coming to Texas from California. He's already building the factory down in Austin for Tesla. I believe some of the corporate infrastructure is going to be in Austin for that. But Elon has also created the Starbase town in southern Texas, down by the border where they are going to launch their rockets. They're going to try to do their mission to Mars from their launch pad in Austin. So it's pretty much, I feel like, guaranteed that SpaceX is going to be here in Texas for the future, for the foreseeable future, which good or bad. But they were talking about the real estate down in that area, down in the southern Texas area. It's always been, since I grew up here, that area has always been known for spring break and going on beach vacations down there and the islands. But now I think it will probably be more known for Starbase and for that whole business. It's interesting that they put out a release for people to move there. That's the reason real estate prices are increasing, because they want engineers, they want mathematicians, they want all these people that have high skills to move down to that area and buy into the SpaceX vision. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that in the future. I mean, you can't deny that Elon has done some amazing things with Tesla, and that I'm sure that SpaceX is going to be a big hit as well. Let's get on to some vaccine news, because I saw this in the news and this made me think of an opportunity, which is that the vaccine is only going to last, or they're claiming that the vaccine is lasting 7 months, that the antibodies after you get the vaccine are going to last 7 months. The data is not in, so nobody knows for sure how long the vaccine will actually last. But it does look like it's only going to be a short-term period, that you're not going to be a one shot and you're good for the rest of your life, that this will probably turn into a yearly vaccine, just like the traditional flu shot, that every year you're going to have to go back and get this vaccine, which made me think you might invest into these companies. I mean, I would say best time to invest into the vaccine companies would have been 6 months ago, but I still think now is as good a time as any to invest in the vaccine, because this will mean recurring revenue. So Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, what was the other one? Like BioNTech, that one, investing into those businesses, because they will have recurring revenue, that every single year they're going to have to create these shots, and they're going to go into CVS, they're going to go into Walgreens, and they're going to go into your local healthcare physician's office to get the vaccine every single year. So who knows, that's a built-in revenue stream for them. And then if it mutates, they're going to have to create new vaccines. And even these companies might be a great investment, because I do think that this virus, or this whole last period, has created a climate of investment into healthcare, into research and development, biopharma, that there will probably be some other vaccines that come out of the medical industry because of all the research that went into this one. So those right there are the companies that you might look into buying into, because they're going to have recurring revenue, and they're probably going to be creating other drugs and other medicines that are related to this vaccine. So that was all I had for today. Thank you for watching this video. I hope that gave you some ideas. I hope to make this a weekly thing. Maybe every Wednesday I will come on and do my thoughts about the week. But that was a breakdown of the local news, of the national news that's happening right now. And I hope you got something out of this. Remember, make good money choices. Till next time.